If you understand some of these key points, you can maximize your score on the AP US History exam. There are 3 amendments to the United States Constitution relating to voting. The 15th, which opens voting to all, regardless of race, that amendment was ignored by our country for about 85 years, a period of time. The 19th Amendment, which we're going to talk about now, and that opened voting to all, regardless of sex. And then there's the 26th Amendment, which opened the vote to all who were over 18. But why did Congress not just pass a law, pass a federal statute regarding voting? Why 3 constitutional amendments? Well, remember that the federal government is a government of enumerated powers. And voting requirements were determined by the states and not the federal government. Hence, 3 constitutional amendments regarding voting. In 1920, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed. It reads, quote, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." Close quote. There you have it. One of the shortest constitutional amendments, yet it was one of the most profound in its impact. History is made by people, and 4 women who dedicated their lives to the women's right to vote, or suffrage, were Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Carrie Chapman Catt, and Anna Howard Shaw. They endured much adversity in this struggle. We owe them, but let's start with a common sense question. Do you think America would not allow any women to vote anywhere, and then one day, suddenly in 1920, allow all women all over the country to vote? No, society does not work that way. As Thomas Jefferson put it, states are to be laboratories of experimentation, and so it was with women voting. Some states allowed all women to vote and had been doing that for some time. See the purple states on the map behind me. They were the western states in New York. Women had been voting in those states for some time. In the upper Midwest, tan on the map, women could only vote in presidential elections. On most of the East Coast and in the South, women were not allowed to vote at all before 1920. In 1920, with the 19th Amendment, all that changed, and all women had the same voting rights that women in the West and that the men had. We need to ask ourselves, what did the 19th Amendment accomplish and what did it not accomplish? What arguments could there be against voting? There actually were some arguments to be made against women voting. Behind me is a headquarters of those opposed to women having the vote. They would argue that allowing women to vote nearly doubles the cost of elections. And this money could be better spent on other things. Besides, they would argue, women vote the way their fathers and husbands vote, so it has no real impact on elections. Both of those statements are generally true. The gender gap is greatly overblown by the media today. There are very few elections where the outcome hinges on the women's vote. Nonetheless, women voting was a crucial step forward for America. It went far to increasing our richness and vibrancy. Why is that? Well, you have heard that America's strength is in its diversity, but that's not completely true. A nation can have a lot of diversity and still be a closed and oppressive society. America's strength is innovation and contribution, but it is innovation and contribution from everyone. That is where our strength lies. Diversity improves that contribution and innovation. If any group is marginalized, we all suffer. Slavery and then Jim Crow laws after slavery were outlawed marginalized blacks. Laws and customs diminishing women have the same effect. Think of the books never written, the songs never sung, the poetry never shared, the great medical breakthroughs never discovered, the architectural ideas never implemented because of the race or sex of the originator of that idea. Marginalization diminishes and harms us all, yet that is precisely what we were doing with women, and the 19th Amendment was a major step to bringing women into the mainstream before we could all benefit from their contributions and innovation. Women getting the vote was a precondition to women's full integration and participation. Let's talk about these contributions in more detail now. Lawyers. Can you imagine female attorneys without the ability to vote? This is Kamala Harris, California Attorney General. Well, how about surgeons and doctors? Do you think women do life-saving surgeries? Could we do that for women? Make them surgeons, yet deny them the vote? How is the society improved by limiting women to being nurses? What about judges? How could we permit women to sit on the bench, yet not vote? Clearly, voting was a precondition to Judge Judy. Here is a portrait of 4 women who either have been or are currently on the U.S. Supreme Court. They would all tell you that their accomplishments were made possible because of the 19th Amendment. I don't know if women would have to vote in order to drive trucks or in order to step into a ring and box, but for most careers, it was important that women have the vote. Here is a protest sign directed at President Wilson outside the White House that was brilliant. It refers to President Wilson as Kaiser and says, "Have you forgotten your sympathy with the Germans because they were not self-governed?" 20 million American women are not self-governed. And then they quote the words of Jesus, where he says, "Take the beam out of your own eye." Well, messages like this caused President Wilson to finally get on board and support the 19th Amendment. Let's look at women now who have achieved enormous success. They would be the first to tell you that the 19th Amendment made it possible. This is Marissa Mayer, the CEO of Yahoo. Here is another picture of Marissa Mayer. We all benefit by removing impediments to the success of others. Here is Sheryl Sandberg. Do you know what company she leads? Facebook. That's right, Facebook. The California Supreme Court Chief Justice is Tani Cantil. Like my wife, she is of Filipino descent. Here is Mary Barra, the new CEO of General Motors. I could go on and on with prominent women making major contributions in America today. If a question arises on the AP US History exam on the 19th Amendment, hammer home that it opened the doors for women to make their contributions and innovations for the enrichment of us all.